This is Ron West here, and I'd like to continue my story about disabled people and their challenges with independent living today. Well, how on earth did I get involved with all this? How did I get involved? Well, have you ever wondered why opportunities appear at what seems the most inappropriate moment? It may surprise you to know that I'm no different. I'm going back to my early years, my teens that is. I'll keep it brief, but it's part of my story, and it's the beginning of why I chose the title for this post. I come back now to the youth club when I joined in my teens, and it was a church youth club in my hometown, and through that club made some very close friends who have been friends most of my life. There were two brothers, John and Ray, whose father ran the club, and another boy, Graham, who became my best friend. The four of us got on quite well together, and we were sitting down and talking in the club one evening, and we decided that we would go away and learn how to run the club together. So we all went away on a training course to learn how to run and manage a successful club for ourselves. And we were qualified, and we had certificates at the end of it and all that sort of thing. And very soon after, we took over the running of our club and gave John, Ray's father, a bit of a break. All he had to do was supervise and sit in his and drink cups of tea during the evening, just watching us. So we were supervised by him and the guy that did the auditing, who was a local bank manager. And we were allowed to, set every program and keep the boys and the young people that we looked after busy. We had some great equipment and everything there. We used to maintain it all and everything. And we had our own various means of transport. We were all well into our teens by the time we took it over. I had a motorbike, John had a motorbike, Ray had a motorbike and sidecar. There was a bubble car involved later on, little Messerschmitt thing, and Isetta, or BMW Isetta, and one guy even had an old station wagon, that's all they call it, estate car, I think they call it today. Loads of room in it, and you could pile a few people into it and trot off, and didn't have seat belts in those days or anything like that, and we could cram about 8 or 9 people into this estate car and go off for the weekend with all that camping gear and what have you. So we used to have a lot of fun. And then early one summer, a young man joined us, and he was disabled. He came along in his disabled car, and he turned up at the church and said he'd like to join the club. We welcomed him with open arms. Somebody new, and we didn't have any problems with it at all. We all agreed immediately, with absolutely no question, bearing in mind that it was a rare sight to see anyone who was disabled and independent in those days and going around on his own. Most disabled people were found in homes or shelters, and in fact Jerry, our newfound friend, lived in a home nearby, but he was obviously determined to be totally independent. That was to be my first taste of disability and independent living, and recognising the day-to-day challenges a disabled person actually faced. Now you may understand a little bit more about why I call this disabled people and independent living. Well, we were sort of go-ahead lads. Most of us were learning. We were in apprenticeships or early in jobs in life, and we were struggling to club together and buy things. And we all had our own versions of transport. I had a motorbike, and there was somebody else had a motorbike and sidecar and bubble cars, and this guy even had an estate wagon, and Jerry had his own in-village carriage. We naturally used to accommodate Jerry first before we decided to go off for the day, planning where to go so that he could join in. We managed to get Jerry in everywhere that we went, even to the point of carrying up a flight of stairs once. And we managed to get him on a fairground ride at Margate one day. And I wondered at the time why this was all happening in my life, but constantly remembering something my granddad said to me and I'll never forget it. I don't forget it until this day. And he said it to me many times. Most things, Sonny, he said, happen for a reason. I never understood it then, and sadly it took a few years before I really did. Later on, I left the youth club and started work full time with a company called Big Blue, IBM. It was called IBM UK, and I started there as a service engineer, working on office equipment. And we were known as CEs, or just customer engineers, basically. That was the title. And I was introduced to that a new form of disability caused by an awful drug that was around at the time. It was something that was given to pregnant mothers. It was a thalidomide period at that time, and something that caused disastrous consequences for the young people that were born, or to me it seemed anyway. I met some of these young people again by seizing an opportunity that came at what I would consider an inappropriate moment. I was just coming to another sort of turn in my career with IBM. I wanted to move on to something else, and this opportunity appeared, and I thought, well, let's have a go. So we had a go at it. It was because several of my fellow engineers were refusing to go back to this Chailey place, and the Chailey Heritage it was called, and it was a school for boys, disabled boys. And the rumour was that it was a pretty unruly place, and they were totally out of hand and did what they wanted to do, and those sort of things. And I thought, well, this would be a nice little challenge. So the Chailey place turned out to be Chailey Heritage School, a boarding school for boys, born with various unusual deformities, limbs missing and limbs growing incomplete, hands growing out the shoulder, and some with no arms at all. And they used to use their feet to do everything, and it was pretty sort of daunting at the first time I went there. And I just sort of looked around, and every kid there was smiling. I mean, they were having a whale of a time, and they were little devils. And I realised that's why the other guys just couldn't cope with it, because they were pretty disfigured and just malformed and all that sort of thing. It must have been a bit traumatic, and all caused by the thalidomide drug. It turned out that many of the CEs couldn't cope psychologically with what they saw at the Chailey School, and just plain refused to go there more than once. Anyway, I picked up the mantle and went off and did what I could for them, and I really enjoyed my time there, and even helped one of the young lads get a job later on at American Express. So yet another instance of my grandfather's wisdom in saying, most things happen for a reason. I was just beginning to understand what he was talking about, because I kept on coming across different things in life that I never expected, and it was how you cope with them, I guess, with what happens. For me, it was the second occurrence of disability that crossed my life in the early years. I was, after all, a bit of a budding entrepreneur and wanted to do things differently. And I progressed up the ranks with Big Blue and became a team leader. Didn't enjoy that too much, because I prefer to work on machines and look after customers rather than looking after other engineers. But I guess that was part of the training as well. And then being asked to go on to a personal development program, PDP program, as the Americans used to say. It was an all singing, all dancing, new, mind-changing experience program designed to change me, I guess, into what at the time I considered to be a bit of a puppet manager. And I really wasn't going there. I mean, I really didn't want to do that, but obviously the way the career had taken me, that was an opportunity. And I didn't like managing people. Manage people? No way. I manage machines and all the challenges they present. Yes. Needless to say, the Big Blue managers didn't get their way. For me, it was simple. They didn't know me. That's the K in KLT. They didn't know me. They didn't ask me. They didn't. They just expected something from me that I didn't want to do. What really happened then? Well, they didn't know. They didn't use the K factor out of KLT. Instead, they tried the hard sell approach, and the hard sell approach doesn't work. It doesn't work today at all. And of course, I was having none of it, because it's a bit like going into a car showroom and getting somebody pounce on you and tell you how wonderful all these cars were when you actually want to go and look at the one you want to go and look at. I got a very interesting and short report at the end of this PDP program, and it was quite a big surprise to me at the time. And it branded me as a man with an entrepreneurial spirit, plus a somewhat jaundiced view of management, is how they put it. Who obviously, I just wanted to carve my own way through life. I enjoy life, and that was the other thing that Grandad said. He said, whatever you do, enjoy your life. Whatever you do. Me, well, I didn't even know what the word entrepreneur meant at the time, but apparently I was one. I very soon found out what an entrepreneur was, and it helped me understand why I was so different to others around me. I did indeed carve out a very different path within the confines of IBM, and within a few years I was working with a whole bunch of oddballs, some call them, but we're entrepreneurs basically, because we do things and we have ideas, and it's nice to be in a place where you can actually materialize those ideas. And working within a massive company like that was quite a rare thing as well. And I've got to say, I enjoyed every minute of it, and was very, very sad when it came to an end. All these things do after 2 years. I'd like to finish there for today, but I'll go on to the thing I mentioned in my first video, the branding challenge that we had, and my first post in part 3. Thank you for listening.